So I ran a poll across different social medias a while back where I asked you all, what is your preferred table size? The answers were both surprising and not. I think the biggest one is that more people voted for 6+ than I personally expected. However, here were the common answers that can actually help you in determining what is the best table size for you and your group. Because this is honestly incredibly subjective. Everyone is going to have different tastes as to what they think is the best or what works best for them. So based upon the polls and various comments, this is largely what I found. First things first, it's going to be heavily dependent on the gamer system. This is absolutely the case, and one that myself and I'm sure other DMs can attest to. When I ran my first ever Pathfinder 1st Edition game, I ran into the trap of accepting anyone who expressed interest. Went from running a table of 2 for Star Wars Edge of the Empire to a table of 7 or 8 for Pathfinder. That was absolutely the wrong move, because Pathfinder, be it 1st Edition or 2nd Edition, is very complex. It has a lot of moving parts and rules. It can be very easy to get bogged down in combats or rules debates with a group of that size. Granted though, that was my experience with it, and I'm sure someone else had a different one. Meanwhile, something like Edge of the Empire, which tends to lean towards cinematic play, actually runs more smoothly in smaller groups. This can also extend to the primary focus of the campaign. Is it going to be high roleplay or high combat? Maybe a mixture of both. For me, I tend to prefer smaller groups for high roleplay. It's a way to make sure everyone gets a spotlight, and if you have a group of actors on hand, they can, and probably will, take a scene and extend it with just the characters' interactions. Secondly, larger groups lead to less cancellation as well as more chaos. This is honestly something I hadn't considered, but it is something that I can confirm as well. When I ran my first 5e game, I also ran a 7-person party, but there it was a lot easier. However, because we had so many people, we didn't cancel as often. Save for when we suddenly dropped down to 4 players or had a lot of people just out of town. And yes, the bigger the group, the more people to rein in and manage in things like combat and RP. It can be a lot trickier to make sure everyone feels like they have a moment to shine. Combats can feel like they go on for a long time. This was certainly the case when I played in an 8-person game for 5e. However, that 8-person game was also a lot of fun, because when we had moments to RP, there were more players to bounce off of, and there would sometimes be sessions where that's all we did and it was great. So there is some give and take. And yes, Critical Role does manage to do it, but remember, they are certainly the exception rather than the rule. Thirdly, smaller groups can lead to more intimate moments and are better for online play. Now, this is something I think many people could actually agree on. For online play, a party of 4 is certainly ideal, because at least less people being talked over by accident and less chaos. Which, yeah, I would certainly have to agree. And yes, when you have a smaller group, one of the benefits means that you can more easily slow down the RP without worrying of advancing the plot, and without question, make sure that everyone has a spotlight. It can also be easier to manage the group as a whole since it is smaller. Not to mention, almost seemingly counter what I just said earlier, with a smaller group, things can move faster as a whole. Though the downside is that smaller group, the more easy it is to cancel games due to people not being able to make it. Now, of course, you can differ from all of this, but from my experience, my games are better with a group of 4 to 5. I can personally manage 6, but any higher than that, it gets rough. However, that is my experience and preference. 5 is certainly my overall sweet spot, as it's what I got accustomed to when I started playing and learning how to Dungeon Master. But that may not be true for you. You may prefer 3-people tables or massive groups of 7 or more, which is the beautiful thing about this hobby. There is a table for all kinds out there for you. Now, how do you find that sweet spot, be it a player or a Dungeon Master? Well, trial and error, honestly. This is one of those things that you go with your gut when you first start out, probably with no more than 5, and see how you feel from there. Eventually, you'll find that Goldilocks zone, and go for that as often as you can. It can be difficult also to turn people away, but trust me, this is something you'll have to learn to do. If you go beyond your limit, your game will be the worse for it. It can also take a while, and you'll need to experiment. It can fluctuate between campaign styles, games, or be a constant. You won't know until you try. So ultimately, what is the best amount of players for your table? The answer is that it wildly depends. From the person running it, those playing, and even the game itself. However, you won't know what you prefer or in what works best for you until you hit that point. And that'll do it for this video, folks. Let me know your preferred table size down below. I'll catch you all next time.